Welcome back to the Chattable podcast, where we learn real English in real life, enrich vocabulary, and feel proud. Picture this. $44 billion are on the line.
That is a massive amount of money.
Right. Lawyers are screaming. The richest man on earth is sending, public mocking memes to a board of directors, while one of the world's most ubiquitous social media platforms teeters on the edge of collapse.
Oh, yeah.
This isn't a schoolyard brawl. This is modern corporate warfare. And if you are going to survive it, or understand it, or even just read the financial news without getting completely lost, you really need to understand the highly specific language of conflict.
You do. And it's a fascinating paradox, honestly. I mean, we have these sterile boardrooms, bespoke suits, and heavily regulated corporate environments.
Very proper.
Exactly. Yet the language executives use when billions of dollars are at stake is incredibly primal. So in this episode, we are mapping the life cycle of a business conflict.
I love that.
We're going to trace how a dispute moves from a direct, aggressive confrontation, escalates into a ruthless, unregulated battle, and then examine the underlying catalyst for all this tension.
Which is usually an underdog.
Right, an underdog threatening an established empire.
So I want to look at the mechanics of that initial spark. You see this constantly in the financial sector right now, particularly with the collision between, traditional legacy banking and the decentralized finance world.
Oh, the crypto clash?
Yeah. So a few years ago, Dimon, the CEO of JPMorgan Chase, got in the face of the CEO of Coinbase and had an intense confrontation with him.
That phrase, got in the face of, is the perfect starting point. When Dimon, who represents the absolute pinnacle of traditional Wall Street banking, calls a competing industry a decentralized Ponzi scheme.
Which is a heavy accusation.
Very heavy. He is not engaging in a polite academic debate. He is drawing a line in the sand. But what is truly interesting about getting in someone's face is the evolutionary psychology behind it.
Because it's a physical metaphor, right?
Yeah.
You were talking about proxemics.
Exactly. The study of proxemics, which was pioneered by anthropologist Edward T. Hall back in the 1960s, maps out human personal space into distinct zones. You have the public zone, the social zone, the personal zone, and finally, the intimate zone.
And the intimate zone is, really close?
Yeah, it's generally considered to be anything closer than 18 inches from your body. Under normal social contracts, only trusted family or romantic partners are allowed in that space.
Okay, so when a stranger or an adversary breaches that 18-inch barrier without permission, our biology reacts, like the amygdala fires up, the fight-or-flight response triggers, adrenaline floods the system.
Precisely. To step into that zone in anger is a biological dominance display. You are intentionally triggering the other person's threat response system. You are inches from their nose, daring them to either submit or fight back. It is the ultimate physical manifestation of an unyielding challenge.
But wait, how does that translate to the modern executive landscape? Dimon and the Coinbase CEO weren't physically standing nose to nose, kicking dirt on each other.
Right, like two baseball managers arguing with an umpire.
Exactly. This is asymmetrical, often digital warfare. Does the phrase still hold its weight if the physical proximity isn't there?
It does, because the proximity has shifted from physical space to psychological space.
Yeah.
You can get in someone's face from 3,000 miles away.
Oh, I see.
It's about aggressively breaching their psychological boundaries. It could be an explosive phone call where one party refuses to let the other speak, or a blistering public takedown on an earnings call. It's the deliberate instigation of a high-stress confrontation where the opponent cannot simply look away.
Let's apply that to the Elon Musk and Twitter acquisition, which is arguably the most chaotic corporate takeover of the last decade. Musk signed an agreement to buy Twitter for $44 billion, largely waiving traditional due diligence.
Right.
But when the market turned, he started aggressively challenging Twitter's management about the number of bot accounts or fake users on the platform.
And he didn't do it quietly.
No, he didn't just send a polite inquiry to their legal department. He publicly mocked the CEO on Twitter itself. He even responded to a detailed thread explaining their bot counting methodology with a poop emoji.
And that is exactly how you breach psychological boundaries in the digital age. Musk was legally and publicly challenging the board's competence, their honesty, and their fiduciary responsibility.
With millions of people watching.
Over 100 million followers. He leveraged that massive audience to apply crushing, inescapable pressure on the executives. They couldn't ignore it. It dominated the news cycle, it tanked their stock price, and it forced them into a defensive posture. That is the corporate equivalent of stepping an inch from someone's nose.
Okay, so establishing the boundaries of this phrase is critical. If getting in someone's face requires this level of severe boundary-breaking hostility, where do we draw the line? Like, let me play devil's advocate here.
Go for it.
Let's say my manager sends me a highly critical email, completely out of the blue, all caps, CCing their boss, pointing out a formatting error I made on a crucial client spreadsheet. I feel attacked. My heart rate goes up. Did my manager get in my face?
No, absolutely not. And framing it that way is actually quite dangerous in a professional environment.
Wait, really? Why?
Because a critical email, even a slightly passive-aggressive one that CCs a superior, is still functioning within the realm of standard corporate hierarchy. It's constructive, albeit unpleasant, feedback. If you go to HR and claim your manager got in your face over a spreadsheet, you are invoking that biological primal hostility we just discussed.
Oh, I see. It falsely implies a hostile work environment with screaming or threats.
Exactly. You are implying a level of severe intimidation or even the threat of physical aggression.
It's a high-caliber phrase. You don't use a cannon to kill a mosquito. You reserve it for explosive negotiations, existential corporate threats.
Or situations where intimidation is the primary tactic.
Which brings us to a fascinating threshold. Because getting in someone's face is often a tactic used to force a specific outcome, right?
Yes.
But what happens when that initial in-your-face confrontation doesn't resolve the issue? The pleasantries vanish and the conflict escalates.
That is when the tone shifts completely. That is when the gloves come off.
I love this one. You see this concept constantly in pop culture, usually played for laughs. Think about the long-running, completely fabricated feud between Jimmy Kimmel and Matt Damon.
Oh, that's a classic.
Right. Every time Jimmy Kimmel and Matt Damon meet each other, it always seems like their gloves have come off for a big fight. For years, they've had this ongoing bit where Kimmel bumps Damon from the guest list. And whenever they actually interact on screen, all the polite conventions of a celebrity talk show just vanish.
They hurl vicious insults at each other.
Deeply personal insults. The comedy works entirely because the audience recognizes that the gloves have come off. The normal rules of polite Hollywood engagement are suspended.
It's a brilliant comedic application, but the origin of the phrase is deeply rooted in actual physical violence, specifically the history of boxing and ice hockey.
Right, let's look at boxing.
So, the Marquess of Queensberry rules, established in the 1800s, mandated the use of heavily padded gloves. Now, most people assume the gloves are there to protect the fighter's face, to make the sport safer.
Yeah, that's what I always thought.
It is a very common misconception. The padded gloves in boxing were primarily designed to protect the small, fragile metacarpal bones in the puncher's own hands. The human skull is incredibly hard. If you punch a skull with a bare fist at full force, you are highly likely to shatter your hand.
Ouch.
Yeah. The gloves essentially weaponize the hands, allowing fighters to throw devastating punches to the head without fear of breaking their own bones. Although the gloves do prevent immediate, superficial lacerations.
So if a fighter were to remove those gloves to fight bare-knuckle,
they are abandoning the regulated safety of the sport. They are accepting the massive risk to their own hands in order to inflict raw, unmitigated damage to their opponent. It turns a sport into a street fight.
Wow. And the analogy is clear in hockey, too, right?
Even clearer. Players wear massive, thick, protective gauntlets. When tensions boil over, the very first thing two players do before fighting is violently shake off those heavy gloves and drop them onto the ice. Dropping the gloves is a universal, visual signal that the rules of the game are over.
So this idiom is really about a sudden shift in tone.
Oh.
It's the exact moment a restrained or polite situation turns ruthlessly serious.
Yes, that shift in tone is the absolute crux of the idiom. Let's translate this to the tech industry because we witnessed perhaps the greatest gloves coming off moment of the 21st century between Apple and Facebook.
Oh, Mark Zuckerberg and Tim Cook.
Right. For years, they maintained a tense but functional professional distance. Apple made the hardware. Facebook made the software that ran on it. They wore their corporate gloves.
Smiled at the same conferences.
Exactly. But then Apple introduced App Tracking Transparency, or ATT, in their iOS update. This is a masterclass in asymmetrical corporate warfare.
How so?
Prior to this update, Apple assigned every iPhone a unique identifier, the IDFA.
The identifier for advertisers.
Right. And this allowed Facebook to track a user's behavior across the entire internet. If you looked at a pair of running shoes on a random website,
Facebook read your IDFA, matched it to your profile, and served you an ad for those exact shoes on Instagram.
Precisely. That targeting was the engine of Facebook's entire multi-billion-dollar advertising advertising business.
And Apple simply added a pop-up, a tiny, polite little prompt asking users if they wanted to allow apps to track their activity. And over 90% of users clicked Ask App Not to Track.
It was a devastating blow. By simply asking the question, Apple severed Facebook's data pipeline. Facebook reportedly lost $10 billion in ad revenue in a single year.
$10 billion.
In 1 year. That is the exact moment the gloves hit the floor.
But wait, was Apple taking the gloves off? Or was Facebook? Because Apple framed this entirely as a pro-consumer, privacy-first initiative. They claimed they were just protecting users.
That's the brilliance of Apple's strategy. They took the gloves off while claiming they were just washing their hands. But look at the rhetoric. Tim Cook gave a speech talking about business models built on data exploitation and engagement algorithms that peddle misinformation.
He didn't say Zuckerberg's name.
No, but it was a bare-knuckle punch aimed directly at Facebook's core philosophy.
And Facebook didn't hold back. Zuckerberg reportedly told his team that they needed to inflict pain on Apple. They took out full-page attack ads in major newspapers claiming Apple would destroy small businesses. The polite PR statements stopped.
The goal shifted from mutual coexistence to inflicting maximum damage, and that is the absolute prerequisite for using this phrase. The gloves coming off requires a baseline of established, serious restraint that is suddenly and violently abandoned.
Which means we shouldn't use it for minor things. Like announcing the gloves are coming off during a casual family game of Monopoly sounds completely ridiculous.
Perfectly dramatic, yeah.
Or if McDonald's introduces a new chicken sandwich to compete with Wendy's, that's not the gloves coming off. That's just standard market capitalism.
Exactly. If two companies have always been bitter rivals, the phrase doesn't apply because they never had gloves on to begin with.
Okay, so we've mapped the initial in-your-face clash and the ruthless escalation when the gloves come off. But often, the reason those corporate giants finally take the gloves off is because a new, smaller competitor has entered the arena and is threatening their dominance.
The underdog.
Right. And that brings us to our final dynamic, the underdog who manages to make a run for their money. Like we said earlier, the crypto industry is really trying to make a run for the money of the major banks.
Right, offering a technologically viable alternative to the monopoly. But the origins of this phrase have absolutely nothing to do with corporate disruption.
Where does it come from?
We have to look back to the pari-mutuel betting systems of 19th century horse racing.
Wait, horse racing?
Yeah. Imagine you are a bettor in the 1800s. You wager a significant portion of your weekly wages on a specific horse. The race begins, and your horse is neck and neck with the absolute favorite. It is an incredibly thrilling spectacle. The crowd is roaring, but at the very last second, your horse is edged out. It crosses the finish line in second place.
So you lost your money. By definition, that's a failure.
Financially, yes. But human psychology is complex. The bettor wasn't just wanting the financial return, they were also paying for the entertainment, the adrenaline. If the horse ran a spectacular race and pushed the champion to the absolute limit, the bettor would walk away saying, well, I lost the wager, but I certainly got a run for my money.
Oh, wow. So the performance justified the bet.
Exactly. But today, the idiom has evolved. It doesn't necessarily imply that the challenger will ultimately lose. What it implies is that the established champion, who normally expects an easy victory, is suddenly forced to exert maximum effort.
An underdog providing unexpectedly strong competition. It's the ultimate David versus Goliath business phrase.
It really is.
Look at the beverage industry. Coca-Cola and Pepsi dominated the soda aisle for decades. They built these insurmountable moats bottling plants, distribution trucks, grocery store shelf space.
It seems financially suicidal to challenge that.
Right. But recently, Alison Ellsworth, the founder of Poppi, is giving those giants a real run for their money with her healthy sodas. She started making apple cider vinegar tonics in her kitchen.
And then went on Shark Tank.
Got a small investment and bypassed the traditional distribution moat entirely by using TikTok. She told her authentic founding story, went viral, and suddenly was generating millions in online sales.
That direct-to-consumer pivot is huge.
Yeah, she tapped into consumers who love soda but felt guilty about the sugar. By the time Poppi pushed into physical stores, they had immense demand. Now they're pulling in hundreds of millions, forcing Coke and Pepsi to scramble. This scrappy underdog from a home kitchen is undeniably giving the global titans a run for their money.
It highlights the element of surprise. The giants weren't looking over their shoulders at a home-brewed vinegar drink. They were caught completely off guard.
But there's a rule for this phrase too, right? The challenge has to be real.
Yes, the threat must be credible, If there is no actual tension, the idiom collapses. If a local high school basketball team plays LeBron James and the Los Angeles Lakers,
They will lose instantly.
instantly, because it is totally one-sided, it would be factually incorrect to say the high schoolers gave LeBron a run for his money.
That makes total sense. Same with Blockbuster and Netflix in the year 2000.
Oh, perfect example.
Right. Netflix only had about 300,000 subscribers and was hemorrhaging cash.
Yeah.
When they offered to sell to Blockbuster, the CEO literally laughed them out of the room.
He didn't even view them as a threat.
Exactly. So in the year 2000, it would be incorrect to say Netflix was giving Blockbuster a run for its money. They weren't. It was only years later, with broadband internet, that the dynamic shifted.
And shortly after that, they simply destroyed Blockbuster. The idiom only applies during that window of intense tension where the outcome is genuinely in doubt.
Well, this has been a phenomenal look at the architecture of corporate conflict. Just to recap for you, it starts with a breach of psychological boundaries. Someone aggressively deciding to get in your face to challenge the status quo.
Which, if unresolved, escalates into a ruthless brawl where the gloves come off and polite conventions are abandoned.
All of which is usually triggered by a disruptive underdog entering the arena, defying the odds, and finally giving the giants a true run for their money.
It's quite a journey. And as we conclude, I want to pose a question for you to consider the next time you read about a massive corporate clash.
Oh, let's hear it.
When we look at the history of business, which of these stages actually drives the most innovation? Is it when the monolithic giants take the gloves off against each other? Or is it the scrappy underdog finally giving them a run for their money?
Wow, that really changes how you view the business world. Thank you for joining us for this episode. Keep analyzing the language around you, keep pushing those boundaries, and we will catch you next time.